We will dive in here. We're going to start with the third-year guys, then we'll do second year, then we'll get to the rookies. So, Alfredo, you are our guest. You can go first. Which name are you stealing from Debro here as your top guy for third year?
Beautiful call.
Oh, man. All right, guys, we got to do it. I'm willing to step on this rake again and again and again. But this time there's a Kirk Cousins rake, and I'm going to go with Drake London here. We've just been waiting for this, and we've all seen the talent, and we've seen the opportunity. It's been there. Now the Falcons get Kirk Cousins coming in, and you try to piece as many things as you can together. It's not just Kirk Cousins coming in, it's Zach Robinson coming in, who's also going to be calling plays. And you go back and you kind of just look at a very small sample size when Jordan Addison was the lead receiver for Kirk Cousins on the Vikings week 5 through 8, when Justin Jefferson was out. Jordan Addison was the wide receiver 7 in half PPR points per game, averaging 8 targets per game. That kind of target share is something that we've seen with Drake London throughout his career, and it would not surprise me one bit if we see that again here in Atlanta with Kyle Pitts and Kirk Cousins. When, by the way, the Kyle Pitts thing, it's not like the Vikings didn't have TJ Hawkinson already on the field there. So Drake London has a very realistic path to being top 10 in targets when you look at what the Vikings have done historically with Kirk Cousins, what the Rams have done historically with Zach Robinson being there. You start to piece together those numbers, and you're looking at probably somewhere around 35, 36 pass attempts per game. Drake London getting, let's say, a 25% target share. You're looking at a guy that could be hitting 150 targets in the season. And you start to look at the archetype that he is. He can play inside, play outside. He can do a lot of the same things that Puka Nacua can do, a physical route runner who can win at the catch point. We definitely want to see a little bit more better, movements after the catch, but he's a good route runner. He's a great hands catcher. This is the type of player that you take the risk on early in your draft because they can absolutely explode. And I think we're finally going to see it here with Drake London. I have him projected right now to be top 12 in targets, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. So yeah, it's all systems go. Drake London, top 12 wide receiver in 2024.
Yeah, definite smash. I'll clear the paint for Debro to agree with you in a second, but I just wanted to also add that, it's not just adding Cousins and Robinson like you mentioned. I like that you hit on the target share because they didn't add a big-time receiver. Like, there was a world where it would have been funny given what they've done in recent years, but, like, you could have justified them drafting Rome Odunze with the 8th pick, instead of Michael Penix. You could have justified them adding another piece there. It's really concentrated with London and Pitts and whatever passing they do with Bijan. I am really excited for London this year. I think it's a very clear pick and a great pick by you. Debro, I know you agree.
Oh, hell yes. Drake London, all we've been waiting for is just competent quarterback play. I said this early in the offseason. I was like, before they signed Kirk Cousins, if you get him competent quarterback play, not even like amazing quarterback play, he's catching 95 to 100 balls. Just throw it out there because he's that freaking good, and he's always had the talent. We just haven't seen him allowed it to flourish with volume. And right now on FantasyPros, per our projections, right now he's, and these are median projections. So right now he is projected to be 15th in receptions at 84.4 and 15th in receiving yards at just a shade over 1,100. And again, those are medium projections. And we're talking about for him to get top 12. I think he's going to be a wide receiver 1. I think that, look, if he has the type of season that I believe he can have, and I'm there because right now I have him as my wide receiver 10. And I think the conversation starts for him at wide receiver 7. I'm all in on Drake London. All in.
Yeah, I don't want to harp too much on like how obvious this is, but like it everything is aligning in place, right? There's so few like red flags you could point to. The one thing I wanted to ask you, Alfredo, is in a world where Cousins, let's say, like struggles coming back from the Achilles. Like Achilles is not like a nothing injury. In a world where he is like not at full strength or even is still injured and for whatever reason they need Michael Penix on the field, do you think stylistically London fits with what Penix likes to do too?
Yeah, you can see there's a little bit of what London does that translates over to a guy like Rome Odunze and what we've seen historically at Washington. Michael Penix has been that vertical thrower. It's not like London can't win deep, and it's not like they don't have enough weapons. I know they didn't get major weapons, but like Darnell Mooney can stretch the field a little bit and take a safety away. You got Rondell Moore running around, even though he's like 4'8", like whatever. You got guys out there that can spread out the defense. So would it drop Drake London if Michael Penix was the quarterback? Sure, of course. I don't think you're putting him in the top 12. You're probably dropping him a little bit closer to like the 18-20 range, but you're still going to end up with a productive guy just simply because the talent is there, the offensive system is there, the targets are going to be there. And that's the big thing. I think that the cherry on top that puts him over that hump is Kirk Cousins, and that's what puts him in that wide receiver 1 conversation.
Debro, who's the first guy you're picking here?
Well, I feel like this is the low-hanging fruit, but we got to mention it. I mean, this is the chalk pick of all chalk picks, but really, I mean, it's going to happen this year, guys. Assuming that Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, Garrett Wilson will be a wide receiver 1. And, I mean, we know the volume is there. Last year, I mean, he crushed in basically everything he could control as far as earning targets. 9th in target share, 5th in first read share. I mean, we're talking about a wide receiver that legit was already last year the wide receiver 5 in expected fantasy points per game, but because Zach Wilson is putrid, he was the wide receiver 32 in fantasy points per game. So all we need is better quarterback play. Think we get that. Aaron Rodgers already is doing everything he needs to do. He's a full go in camp. He's had more than a year coming off the Achilles. I'm not worried about it, man. Garrett Wilson to the moon. Wide receiver 1 this year.
Alfredo, we were talking about it before the show, and like you obviously agree with Garrett Wilson. Like Debro said, it's kind of low hanging fruit. Are there any red flags against Garrett Wilson? Is there a case you can make against him as one of the more obvious, potential wide receiver 1 breakouts?
Well, it's not fair because you're asking a Dolphins fan to find the negative in a Jets player, so I can do that with my eyes closed, man. But it's honestly, you could poke holes in any of the profiles for these guys. Like you could sit here and say, okay, Robert Saleh, he puts out a really good defense and that Jets defense is strong. Maybe they want to control the pace of games and not throw as much and they won't be as behind as they were with Zach Wilson. They added Mike Williams, they added Malachi Corley. Maybe they want to establish the run a bit more. Like you could start to poke these holes, but at the end of the day, it just kind of boils down to you've got a very good quarterback, a very good receiver. He's going to earn the targets. Don't overthink it. It gets pretty simple for fantasy football.
Yeah, and Garrett Wilson, of all the guys we're going to name today, he is ranked the highest in our expert consensus rankings. This is half PPR, by the way. He's ranked the highest. He's wide receiver 7. He's the second guy in tier 2, so very aggressively being ranked there in the early rankings. And ADP is reflective of that as well. He's wide receiver 8. And he's going in the first round of drafts, at the back end of the first round. So he is, somebody that everybody is agreeing on. And the case is really obvious there. So I thought there were 2 kind of clear names that we were going to start with, and those were the 2 names that we started with, Drake London and Garrett Wilson. There are other really interesting, exciting names I'm optimistic about, but those 2 kind of separated themselves for me. Alfredo, who's the next name you want to bring up?
Next name is a guy that I thought would break out last year, and he did kind of to an extent, just not as much as we really wanted to see, and it's Chris Olave. And I mean, last year was not bad, 134 targets, tied for 12th, 15th in target share. Like this was a guy who was still very productive. And now the Saints let Michael Thomas walk. They didn't really add any major target competition in free agency or the draft. And I mean, if we're being honest, Chris Olave had like the worst 1,100 yard, 80 catch season that we can remember. It seems like the way everyone talks about it and feels about it, you would have thought that he got like 600 yards and like a single touchdown, and it was just awful. Everything there in New Orleans was just really unlucky. With lack of touchdowns, missed throws deep. The Saints offense just had a horrible catch rate. It wasn't just an Olave thing. It was the same thing was happening with Rashid Shaheed and Michael Thomas. All of their receivers were outside the top 40 in catch rate. Now, Clint Kubiak comes in as the offensive coordinator coming in from San Francisco. The Niners led the league in passing plays of 20 plus or 40 plus yards. So we're going to get more explosive plays there from Olave and from Shaheed and these guys. And so the whole thing, just to like get a little football nerdy here, the problem with Derek Carr last year was he was doing a lot of these prayer balls. Like he was just catching, throwing, and hoping the receiver would go track it down. What we're going to see a lot more from Kubiak this year is a lot more play action, which helped Derek Carr quite a bit more back in 2020 and 2021 when he was actually producing good fantasy wide receivers. We know Olave's a great route runner. We know he's got speed, he's got hands, he's got all of that. This should allow Carr and Olave a bit more time to get their timing down on those deep plays and actually just be able to use Olave. Stop sending him deep every single dang time. Like you can have him run some intermediate routes and get Carr on the move with some play action. So I think we're going to see that. If you add just a couple of touchdowns last year, maybe some of those missed touchdowns from Carr, Olave would have been a top 12 wide receiver. So I think it's very much within the realm of possibility for him in 2024.
I was actually surprised to see Olave in ECR ranked as a top 12 guy. He's wide receiver 12 in the early rankings. Not because it's a bad ranking, but because of what you said about how it really felt like last year was a bigger disappointment than it even was. I was like very happily drafting Olave back half of the second round last year. If I was getting him in the early third, I was over the moon. I was very, very excited about Olave last year. And from that perspective, it did feel like a disappointment because it wasn't this superstar breakout that I was hoping for. But you're right. I mean, if we're looking 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, not amazing. It's not like he had 0, almost 90 catches. So perhaps the kind of narrative around Olave during the season last year was maybe harsher than it deserved. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised that he's being ranked as wide receiver 12. He's being drafted as wide receiver 11, so even higher than the rankings. Debra, what do you make of Olave this year?
It's a fantastic call by Alfredo. I love this so much because exactly what y'all are pointing out here. The narrative around his season and the reality of his season are two different things. I mean, he improved. From his rookie season to his second year, we wanted to see growth. The fact of it is it wasn't as much growth because of the complexion of the offense and Derek Carr not playing good as we hoped to see. But did we also see him best his rookie target volume? Yes. Did he have more receptions? Yes. Receiving yards? Yes. Did he also finish better in his second season as the wide receiver 19 versus his rookie season? Absolutely. And everything that Alfredo laid out there, the part that I love the most about it is when he talked about how Derek Carr played last year. We're talking about a quarterback that not only had the 8th most deep attempts, he had the 6th highest check down rate. So it was literally YOLO ball or dump it down to Kamara, and there was nothing in between. So I love that Alfredo brought up the difference in the offense this year because we know Olave can win the intermediate. Just let the man go out there, run routes over the middle, cook dudes, get separation, and we could see a lot of easier completions for him this year. If that happens, oh, dude, he's going to be a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, it's a great point. And my big kind of follow-up question that I was going to ask about was Derek Carr, but you've already addressed that. I think that it's hard to kind of sit here and say I'm optimistic about Derek Carr, but I think it's reasonable to expect that given the scheme change and what they're going to be trying to do on offense, you can at least expect him to be good enough to, support a guy that's really talented that we all think can be a wide receiver 1. Debro, give me the last third-year guy we're going to talk about.
Oh, people are going to hate this, and I know they're going to hate it, and I'm prefacing this with because it's always, oh, well, this guy burned me last year, and a lot of people didn't want to believe in him to begin with. But I'm bringing up Christian Watson here, and I know that I'm already getting the collective eye roll of everybody watching this on YouTube, and that's fine. But as much as everybody loves, and we're going to talk about it, so I'm not going to shade Jaden Reed too much. Everybody loves Jaden Reed. But they're all out on Christian Watson because of the hamstring and stuff. And look, I'm not going to get caught up in all the stuff about, oh, the guy's injury prone. He can't stay healthy. Dude, there's so many players, if you go back, that are injury prone until they're not. I mean, how many times do we play that game with Keenan Allen? How many times did we talk about this with Will Fuller? And then when he stayed healthy, he was freaking amazing. And the other thing I want to bring up with Christian Watson is, so I'm not worried about the injuries. It's baked into even more so with his ADP this year, but he has the talent to be a wide receiver 1. And here's the other thing that people don't realize. When he was actually on the field playing at least 73% of the snaps, so weeks 5 through 13, he was the Packers wide receiver 1. He led the team in that span when he was out there, and not even saying like he was fully healthy, because I don't even thought even when he was playing a full-time role last year, I don't think we saw a fully healthy Christian Watson at any part of last season. That didn't stop him when he was a full-time player from leading the team in target share, air yard share, yards per route run. Yes, even better than Jaden Reed. End zone targets. He had 14 in that span to Romeo Doubs, 7. First read share and first downs per route run. So basically, I could have just summed this up really quickly and saying everything we care about for wide receivers, when Christian Watson was on the field last year, he led Green Bay in everything. So why would we not think that Jordan Love's second year of this offense, and if he can reproduce what we saw down the back half of last year, because really, Christian Watson wasn't around when Jordan Love really took off down the back half of the year. So if both of those things coincide and we do get health out of Christian Watson, I think all of the hype that we had and the hope that we had for his second year all comes back and pays off in his third season.
Yeah, I appreciate you picking somebody who's ranked much. I mean, the guys you already talked about are ranked in like the back half of, the top 12 already in terms of, the early rankings in ADP. Christian Watson's in like the mid 40s. So he's further down. And I really appreciate you kind of picking somebody that is maybe a bit bolder of a prediction. For me, like the question, you're making a very good case for why he could be the Packers wide receiver 1. It's harder for me to see like a wide receiver one in terms of being top 12, just because there are mouths to feed, even if he's at the top of the food chain in that offense. And then they also added, Jacobs and your boy Marshawn Lloyd. And I just feel like there's just a lot. To me, I don't know that the targets will be high enough that without a lot of touchdowns, he can be a wide receiver one. And there's just a lot of options for guys to get touchdowns in this offense. So I see the upside case, but to me, like everything has to go right just because there's so many other options in that offense. What do you think, Alfredo?
I'll save most of my stuff because I am talking about Jaden Reed a little bit later. But I'll say this, and to Debro's point of Christian Watson, which I totally agree with. I think we learned last year, and we should have already known this, is just get pieces of good offenses. And when you know that there's going to be a good passing attack, a good quarterback, good offense, that they're going to be in scoring range pretty much wherever they are on the field, get pieces of that. And oftentimes you can look and see who's going to be the cheapest piece of that. Could that be a guy like Dontavian Wicks? Sure. But if we're talking about the guy that could possibly break out into the top 12, I think the names we want to look at are going to be Christian Watson and a guy that I might talk about a little bit later.
Debra, last thought on just this offense in general. Any hesitation at all just about like Jordan Love really only did this for half a season at such an elite level? I mean, I'm with you. I'm very much thinking this Packers offense will be really good this year. I'm a full-on believer in Jordan Love, but do you have any hesitation of the sample size isn't that big yet?
Well, first I want to kind of highlight the point that you made about touchdowns. We're really worried about Christian Watson scoring touchdowns, Worm. In 20 career starts, he's scored 14 total touchdowns.
I didn't say I was worried. I said he needs to do it.
Touchdowns is not what I'm worried about with him. But to your point about Love, is there worries there? Yes. Because we haven't seen him do it for a full season.
I'd even say, sorry to cut you off, I'd even say hesitation more than worries. I wouldn't even say like I'm concerned. It's just like but just something in the back of my mind.
It's in the same ballpark. And I think they're fair to question because have we seen Jordan Love do this for an entire season? No. Have we seen pretty much over the entirety of his career just as equal amounts of Jordan Love as really freaking good Jordan Love? Yes. So I get the hesitation. For me, I think this is one of those moments where it's like, am I going to hedge or am I going to be aggressive in drafts? And do I believe the small sample can be reproduced? I think it can be. And the parts of pieces is what we see out of Love, especially going into the second year as the starter, the system he's going to be comfortable with, as well as the rapport with his wide receivers. And if we get better health out of Watson, the offensive line, Luke Musgrave, all these parts and pieces of this offense, I think we could see another leap for Jordan Love. And I know that sounds crazy considering what he did down the back half of last year. But really, I can really make you an easy argument that I don't know if we've seen the true ceiling for the player yet.
The NFL draft is over. The teams are set. It's time to start looking ahead to the NFL season with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Get a jump start on the season with futures bets on division winners, win totals, stat leaders, and so much more. Explore the latest odds on which rookies will have the most passing or receiving yards, or check out futures for your favorite teams and players on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. One bet I'm looking at right now is the stacked Offensive Rookie of the Year race. Caleb Williams, the obvious heavy favorite at plus 175. I know Debro, of course, is all in on Jaden Daniels in fantasy, at least. He's plus 650 for Offensive Rookie of the Year, same as Marvin Harrison Jr., J.J. McCarthy at plus 800, and Malik Neighbors at plus 1,400. Round out the top five. We're going to talk about a couple of those guys in our rookie segment, of course. I think you can make a reasonable case for any of those guys as reasonable bets at the values they're currently at. And if one of those rookie wide receivers does break out as a wide receiver one in fantasy, you can be sure they'll be strong contenders for that award too. However you plan to bet your NFL futures, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FantasyPros. New customers bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. That's code FantasyPros only at DraftKings. The crown is yours.